The land beneath Redstone Arsenal has a lot to say, particularly about the African Americans who lived in Pond Beat and Mullins Flat after the Emancipation Proclamation and the aftermath of the Civil War. In Pond Beat, about 3/4 of the families living there were African American, and half of the population of Mullins Flat was African American. And a third of all African American families in Pond Beat and Mullins Flat were landowners.
Upon emancipation, it was a big priority for a lot of the African American families to acquire land as a means of gaining subsistence and a way to make a living, essentially, some sort of permanence and an economic base.
The families didn't move far from where they resided before emancipation. They bought the land from the plantations their ancestors had worked as slaves. After emancipation and the end of the war, the white landowners could no longer maintain their large operations, so they divided up their land and sold it off. These were small farms, about 20 acres in size. They grew mostly food crops and raised pigs and chickens. The goal was not to grow enough crops or tend enough livestock to sell commercially. Instead, the goal was simply to have enough to feed their family.
So this area was always kind of a backwater. There were several large plantations here, but they were far enough outside of Huntsville and the seat of government where they kind of operated independently. And even before the Civil War, even though there were some major plantations, they weren't really incorporated into high society in Huntsville so much. So they were kind of left to their own devices out here in southwestern Madison County.
That way of life continued throughout the 1920s and late 30s. During that time, a central business hub of the area was located where the garrison headquarters sits today, Building 4488 on Martin Road. It featured a blacksmith, a casket maker, and other small businesses that supported the community. And like everywhere else in the South, there were also 3 different churches in the immediate vicinity. Then, as the U.S. started gearing up for World War II, it began acquiring land for Army posts, and in 1941 decided to create Redstone Arsenal.
So when the Army moved in here in 1941, they bought out all the landowners. A handful held out and refused to sell until the Army had to condemn their land, and then they took what the Army had to offer. So just about everyone, all those 600 families were displaced in 1941, 1942. For the tenant families, they were essentially just asked to leave by their landlords without compensation. So the landowners were all compensated fair market price, or what was considered that, but tenants, sharecroppers, renters had to leave and find homes elsewhere without any compensation.
For the most part, the families didn't go far. They moved to places northwest of Huntsville, and many of those families still live there to this day.
On average, a lot of the African American landowners did not refuse to buy out. Very few of them held out for a higher price or pushed back. Most of them took the first offer and sold out. We seem to see a higher rate of women landowners among the African American community than the white community here. We do have a lot of white female landowners, but the rate seems higher among the African American communities, and that may speak to the more matriarchal nature of African American society.
The garrison provides access to the lands for the descendants of the families who used to live here. Some of the families hold a family reunion every couple of years on post. The Arsenal has recorded 1,000 archaeological sites, and they find more all the time. And each one has its own story.